and welcome to the Cheer Up Podcast. My name is Kara, and I'm the host, and with me is speaker and author Sherry Swalwell. Ooh, Sherry, it's November. Are you excited?
I am, and I'm sitting here with my hot cup of coffee, no iced coffee from this summer, but my fire going behind me, and life is really good.
I know, right? It is. We've talked endlessly for those who listen to the podcast about our love for fall and fall decor and the Christmas holidays and everything. And some of us, I'm not going to mention any names, have already started Christmas decorating as of October 31st. So you want to know more about that, please feel free and tune into the previous episode and we go into more detail about that. But today we are continuing our series on prayer partners and prayer partnering. And what is a prayer partner? What do they do? And everything that entails being a prayer partner or finding a prayer partner or being a prayer partner. And today we're going to continue that discussion. And real quickly, we just want you guys to know that don't forget to like us on Spotify, Apple, iTunes. If you're enjoying what you're hearing, please share the podcast with others. Download, subscribe. If you subscribe, then you know each and every time we come out with a new podcast, which is every Wednesday morning. So just tune in every Wednesday and you'll be able to join us as we continue to do the podcast. And the past couple of weeks, it has been on prayer partnering. And today, what else are you going to share with us, Sherry, about in prayer partnering?
We're going to talk about evaluating for growth. Before I get into that, though, I have to say Wednesdays are becoming my favorite days of the week. I know they are technically are considered the hump day, but I love waking up to a new podcast every Wednesday. I love getting through, quote unquote, getting through the first 2 days of the week. And then I have Wednesday to look forward to. And then Thursdays and Fridays are always my favorite days anyway, because I get to do more of my own work instead of working for others. I enjoy the people that I work for. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining, but isn't it always just more fun to work on your passion and your desire? And I like to create and I like to control things. So when I write, then I get to figure out what my characters are going to do. And then they get to, I get to control somebody.
Right. And Thursday and Friday give you a glimpse into the weekend, right?
Yes.
You're getting that much closer to the weekend. So Wednesdays is just like those days, that day is like, ugh, Monday was probably hard. Tuesday's probably harder. And then you got Wednesday because you're not quite nearing the weekend yet, but it's that little hump you have to get over.
Yeah.
and then it's like boom, Thursday and Friday you just kind of breeze through. So you're right. It really puts a new spin on Wednesdays, doesn't it?
Yeah. So I think Wednesdays are becoming one of my favorite days of the week. I really love connecting with people and just giving people presents every Wednesday.
I know, right? And then just hearing from you guys, because we hear from you guys on social media. And again, I just can't thank you enough for the love and everything that you guys show towards us by liking and sharing and telling others about us. So we just want to say thank you again to those who do that. But yeah, Wednesdays is, if you want to listen to a new episode, it uploads every Wednesday. And if we ever have any changes or anything like that, like if we're not going to record or something like that, or excuse me, not record, a podcast is not going to be available for whatever reason, then join a Facebook Cheer Up, the Cheer Up Podcast Facebook group, because that is where we will make those announcements.
Yes, absolutely. And I love that our Cheer Up Facebook podcast group is growing. That is
I know. We just had someone ask to join the other day. So you guys keep coming, keep spreading the word. And the more people we get, the more and again, if you have any questions, you can always email us too. You can either message us at Facebook or you can email us at cheeruppodcast@gmail.com.
Yep, we love hearing from you. So today we're going to talk about how you evaluate for growth. And evaluating for growth in a prayer partnership is twofold, because not only are you evaluating for your own personal spiritual growth, and sometimes I don't know about you, but for me, all of the growth kind of melds together. So when I grow spiritually, I also grow physically, and I grow emotionally, and I grow mentally. So it's not only evaluating your prayer partnership growth, but it's also evaluating your personal growth. And if you're growing as a prayer partnership, you're going to see the benefits of growing personally as well. And when you're growing personally, you're going to see the benefits in a prayer partnership. Just like with a marriage, just like in a family, when you're growing yourself, like someone gave me a diagram of a triangle. And they said that if you are growing closer to God and God is growing closer to, okay, I'm not sure if I'm getting the whole thing right. But anyway, the whole point of the thing is if you are growing closer to God and your husband's growing closer to God, then you're going to be growing closer to your husband at the same token. Or if you and your husband are growing closer to each other and you're growing closer to God, then your husband is also going to grow closer to God. So it's kind of the same thing with like a prayer partnership as well. When you're growing, then your prayer partnership will benefit. When your prayer partnership is growing, you personally will benefit. So when I was thinking about that and how to talk about it today, I came up with 3 different ways that you can evaluate your own personal growth and or your prayer partnership growth. So the first would be with your prayer life. We've talked a lot about praying, and praying is really just having a conversation and growing your relationship with God. So evaluating myself and my relationship with Annie now compared to, and she and I were talking about this the other day, I'm not even sure how long we've been a prayer partnership. I'm thinking like 7 years by now, but it's just kind of like, it feels like I've just known her my whole entire life at this point. And it's just been such a blessing. But I think it's been about 6 or 7 years at this point. And so looking at my prayer life 7 years ago and looking at it now, has there been growth there? When she and I first met and we first started praying together, it was awkward. We both had prayed out loud before. We'd grown up in church. And so that wasn't really an issue. It was more of, did we feel comfortable praying about the important things, the things that were near and dear to us, out loud with each other, being vulnerable with each other? And because of the other areas that we've talked about in previous podcasts, we started out small, and then we were able to grow into a deeper relationship and a deeper prayer life. And so when I think about our prayer life, and I think about mine in particular, when we first started praying together, I didn't notice it at first, but I still had the mentality back then that God was my judge. He was judgmental. He was waiting to throw lightning bolts on my head. He was waiting to punish me. And I was scared of God. When we first met and we first started praying together, I was scared of God still. And I didn't notice it, but she would always refer to God as Abba, which means daddy or father. And I would refer to him as God. When I started to get more comfortable and I started to understand that he really wasn't that judgmental God waiting to smite me, waiting to kill me, waiting to punish me, then I started to call him Abba. I started to shift. My mindset started to shift, and I started to see him more as that loving father. But throughout the years, I noticed, especially at the beginning, and I say this to say that, just hear me out. So in the beginning, I would change back and forth. When I started to feel judged and punished, he would go back to being God. And when I felt that he was loving, he would switch to Abba. And I have noticed, even now, I will have periods where I feel more condemned is not, well, I feel condemned, but God doesn't condemn, God convicts. So when I take on the old patterns and the old habits that I thought that I had been delivered from and that I thought that I had moved past, when those come back and rear their ugly head from time to time, much shorter durations and much less frequently now than in the past, he'll go back to being God for me. I still refer to him as God in a reverent way, but in my mind, I know the difference. I know when I'm referring to him as God feeling punished. I know when I refer to him as Abba feeling loved. And I know when I refer to him as God in a reverent way. So for me, that has been a real milestone marker of growth, of seeing that I used to feel punished and judged constantly. And now it's much less frequent. I can identify the lie much faster. I can rebuke it. I can say, nope, I'm not going there. I already know the truth, and that's not the truth. And I can move on, and I can find that freedom, feel that freedom again, and he goes back to being my daddy or my Abba. So I ask that of you with your prayer life. Have you noticed a difference either in a prayer partnership that you have with somebody or even just individually in your own self? Take the last 5 years if you don't have a prayer partnership time frame to go on, like I did with Annie. Take 5 years, take 10 years. How is your prayer life different now, 5 years later, 10 years later, than it was a decade ago or a half a decade ago? The next one is individual struggles. So when I look at my life 7 years ago, I was much more fearful. I was gripped in depression, and I lived life from the perspective of fear versus faith. I didn't have that heavenly perspective that I have much more so now. I was learning the heavenly perspective versus the earthly perspective. I was learning that when things didn't go as I had planned, when my plans changed, it wasn't the end of the world and it wasn't somebody else's fault. It was, okay, how is God going to use this? Did God want my plans to change because he has something better in mind? It was looking at it more from the perspective of God loves me. He's got my back. This is going to be okay. This is just a bump in the road, not a valley that I have to sludge through or a marsh that I have to sludge through. And that growth continues. Like, it's still happening now. I want to go to the spiritual life, and then I'm going to come back to the individual struggle to give you an example. So what about your spiritual life? Like, do you have devotions regularly? Do you have them out of habit? Do you read the Bible so you can check mark, okay, I read a chapter today? Or do you get excited about studying his word? I have a different group of friends right now that this summer we started reading a different book of the Bible, one a month. We're not going through a plan. We're actually, it's actually really kind of cool because I was talking to my one friend and I was saying, you can start anywhere in the Bible. It really doesn't matter. And it just happened to be July. Well, July has 31 days 31 days for the month. And the book of Proverbs has 31 chapters. So I made the suggestion. I'm like, well, we could read one chapter a day for July, and we would have a whole book read by the end of July. Well, this friend of mine said, that would be awesome. Let's do it. The next month, we invited another friend, another prayer partner, another sister in Christ. And so I had told my first friend, I said, now you need to pick the next book that we study. I picked Proverbs. God put that on my heart. So you pick the next one. And she says, well, there's a book of the Bible that God's been wanting me to read. So how about we read that one? So we read that one for the month of August. Well, then our friend had joined us, or our other friend had joined us for that month. So I said, okay, it's your turn to pick one. And she talked to God about it. And so we're reading another book of the Bible for, the next month and the next month and the next month. So, soon it's going to be my turn to pick again, and we're just going to keep going around. And because of that, because of just that encouragement with each other, we are reading a book of the Bible every month, and we're loving it. And so that's part of spiritual growth. So 5 years ago, did you have a quiet time? And if you did, does it look differently than it does now? What about tithing? That's another spiritual truth. Do you tithe? If you tithe, do you do tithes and offerings? Like, where are you at spiritually? So I say all that to say that Annie and I, when we first met and first started meeting together and talking and so on and so forth, I was fasting. She was not. She didn't feel like that was something that God was calling her to do at that point in her life. And it was something that I had made or tried to make a practice of. Although looking back on it now, I see that there are lots of ways that God needed to help me improve. So recently, just this past year, 2021, Annie and I were called to fast together. And we were fasting about something very specific. And God has really opened my eyes and taught me so much more about fasting and what it means and how to do it correctly. And Annie, she loves it too. Like the fact that we're fasting together for the same thing, just where 2 or 3 are gathered, there he is in the midst. And it just brings it to a whole new level for us. And the things that we're fasting for, God has invited us in to fast for them. And so I just know, I have this confidence that God is going to give the victory and the breakthrough because he's the one that invited us to do it. So one of the positive outcomes that has come from this fasting is God really pinpointed for me. He really spotlighted for me an area in my life that I had struggled with. And it was one that I wasn't very proud of. I've been a Christian my whole life, but I have a real, okay, so I'm making this major confession on this podcast, but I hate telemarketers. I hate customer service in that regard. And there are just specific companies that I have just a real struggle with. And while I don't yell at them, while I'm not like super, super mean, I am not as Christ-like as I want to be. When I end the conversation with them, I'm ashamed of myself because my tone is rude. I'm sarcastic. There's anger that comes out of my voice. I just don't like it. Like I don't feel like I'm a good representation of Jesus at all. And I have struggled with this for years. And there are just certain companies that when I know that I have to deal with them, I just dread it. I get a pit in my stomach and I start out defensive, and that's just never good. Well, God really highlighted that attitude of mine, because really it's an attitude. It's a sinful attitude. And he really highlighted that for me in one of the fasts that we were doing. And he's kind of really helped me see how wrong that is and how to do it differently. And I have noticed a huge difference in myself. I'm more patient. I'm more kind. I just have more compassion. And as much as I am ashamed that he had to teach me that at almost 50 years old, he had to teach me that at almost 50 years old. So that's another individual struggle that I have, that he has helped me overcome. And I've been able to see that when I've evaluated for the growth in myself personally. So it's really kind of exciting. Like when you think about a prayer partnership and having a prayer warrior, when you're done with your encounter with them, are you both better for it? Do you feel filled up? Do you feel that you have this overflowing bucket of love and peace and joy that you can then share with other people? If you don't, if you go away from it feeling negative or feeling depressed or feeling down on yourself or feeling angry or feeling critical, maybe you really need to rethink, is this a prayer partnership that pleases God? Are we moving in the right direction? And, you know, my pastor made a comment and he said, all of us are only one step away from change. You're one step away from making a positive change, turning your life around and moving in the right direction. We're one step away from making a negative change and moving in the opposite direction, moving in a downward spiral. So if you are in a position when you're evaluating your prayer partnership and you're saying, oh, wow, we've kind of shifted over into the gossip, we've kind of shifted over into that Eeyore pig pen, glass half empty mentality, you're only one step away from changing that, from turning it more positive, for walking towards the Tigger, walking towards half full, walking towards what kind of lemonade can we make from this pile of lemons that we have. So I want to encourage you with that, because evaluating for growth, whether it's individually, whether it's in your marriage, whether it's with your parenting abilities, your career, your prayer partnership, it's always a good idea to take that time every once in a while, periodically, to evaluate for growth so that you can make those tiny increment changes that will help move you in the direction that God wants you to go. And if you notice that you've already made substantial growth, then celebrate. Be happy about it. Take that time to to say thank you to your prayer partner. I thank Annie all the time for her mentorship, for her encouragement, for her blessing, for just giving a godly example for me to follow. And she thanks me as well for different things that I do for her. So evaluating for growth is a very vital, very positive, very helpful tool in your prayer partnership, but just also in your individual life. What do you think, Kara?
Especially in our individual lives as well, because as I was listening to you, as you were talking about, are you better off now than you were 5 years ago with like your prayer partner? Just keep in mind, it's the same thing with any type of relationship and friendship. If you look back and you say, I've been friends and or prayer partners with this person for the past 2 years, and my life is worse now than it was before. I have more drama. I have more issues. I am more stressed out. I'm not as happy as I once was. Then that is something that you probably need to reevaluate if you're actually growing in that relationship. And if not, why? And how do you see it in the future? Do you think it's just going to continue this way, or do you think that there's hope for the situation? So it's always good to kind of go through with a fine-tooth comb, not just our prayer partners, because they're so important. And if you're not being benefited by it spiritually, then you may need to find someone else, unfortunately. And with friendships, that's kind of like a little different story, but always take that time to just kind of reevaluate and analyze. But if someone is draining your spiritual tank more than they're able to fill it, or at least be on the same par with you, then that's definitely something that you want to definitely take a look at and just see if that's a friendship you may need to cease, put on pause, or just take to God actually what the next step should be. But definitely we should be growing. I remember reading something the other day that says, you're growing. I'm just going to do the Kara version of it. Pretty much it was saying, you're growing if it hurts. And meaning you're going to another step and it's kind of painful. And it's painful because the other part of you that kept you stagnant for so long is fighting to not let go. But you're growing. And you're growing, and you're like, okay, I got to cut this off. I got to cut that off, and everything else. I got to embrace this, even though I don't like it, and everything else. And that's when you're growing. For instance, in forgiveness, if someone has really done you wrong, and the Lord has been ministering to you about you have to forgive them, there's pain in that. That hurts. Because in your comfort zone, you're like, no, I'm not ever going to forgive them, and I'm comfortable in that, in my unforgiveness. But when the Lord starts ministering to you, like you really need to reach out to them and or you need to forgive them, whichever one the situation may be, then there's some pain with that. And that's one good sign of growth is that you see yourself and it hurts. And I think even physically, when we're growing, they call it growing pains for a reason. And I think that has to do with like physically, like our joints, the bones in our body. Like when we're actually started growing, I'm way beyond my growing point. I think I'm going to be 5'3" or whatever forever now. I don't think I'm going to grow anymore, but in those days when we're actually growing and growing up, they're called growing pains for a reason. And a lot of times it's because, and physically our bones feel that. And so it's a reason for that. And it's the same way in our spiritual walk. Your spirit should feel it. And it's not a pain that you necessarily need to take something for. It's a pain that you need to embrace.
I love that. I love what you just said. And I love that description, that picture that you painted with that. That is just absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, and it's so necessary. And so many of us, myself included, are afraid of growing pains.
Absolutely.
We really, really are. And the reason I use unforgiveness for an example was because I struggled with that for so long. So long, longer than I'm willing to admit right now. But let's just say it was decades. regarding certain people. And it's not like the Lord hadn't been ministering to me about that or trying to touch my heart about that. I was just being stubborn. I was being stubborn. I was comfortable in my unforgiveness and I wanted it to stay there. But oh my goodness, when you're on the other side of it, you're like, why did I wait so long? Why did it hurt? Golly, it hurt. And I knew it was going to hurt and I didn't even want to do it, but and it hurt so much to do that because you're letting go of something and that you really want to hold on to. And to me, it was unforgiveness and it hurt. But then when you're on the other side of it, you're like, what a blessing that was. And that's all God was trying to show me in the beginning was that once you let this go, then you can truly live. And not only that, those relationships flourished and everything. It was like a barrier had been knocked down and I was the one holding it up. And then, and now I can't even imagine my life without those relationships and mending, those fences or whatnot. And it's just such a blessing. And I could have been keeping myself away from a blessing simply because I was afraid to grow, because I knew it was going to hurt and I knew it was going to hurt bad. And it did. But then on the other side of it, you're like, wow, look what I would have missed out on. Look what I would have missed out on. This actually was the best thing for me. And how many years did I miss out on by being stubborn and rebellious and not just being obedient? So it's like you have to embrace those pains. You know it's going to hurt and there's probably going to be tears involved, and everything. But it's just, imagine like when you have to get a tooth pulled. You know it's going to hurt. You don't even want to get it pulled. You're like, it's not hurting as bad now, but it's probably going to hurt when they yank it out and everything. So, but afterwards you feel so much better because you can't let that tooth stay there, especially if it's something like a wisdom tooth, because it ends up having like an abscess, which can poison your whole body and possibly kill you. And that is what some things that we refuse to grow from can do. It can poison us spiritually and kill us spiritually. And we never grow and are able to walk into that abundant life that Christ has promised us. Grow. It hurts. You're going to cry, more than likely, but trust me, it is such a blessing on the other side. There's a reason our God is touching your hearts and our hearts and everything else and saying, let it go or embrace this or whatever. And it's because he knows the blessing that's on the other side.
Absolutely. And he wants to give us those blessings. And it goes back to that story of the plastic beads. There's a story that I read on Google or on the internet or whatever, where this little girl, she lost her mom. Her mom died. She had a very loving dad, and her mom had given her these dime store plastic beads. And because they were from her mom, they were really precious to her. And so every day the dad would ask her, will you give me those beads? I know how much they mean to you. Will you give me your beads? And every day she would refuse, and she didn't understand because her dad was so loving why he wanted her beads, knowing how much they meant to her. Well, finally one day she was like, you know what? If it means that much to him, I love him, I'll go ahead and give him the beads. And he had been waiting that whole time for her to give up those dime store plastic beads so that he could give her the pearls from her mom instead, genuine pearls. So God knows the blessings and the treasures that he's waiting to give us, but we have to give up those plastic beads. We have to be willing to grow, and we have to be willing to step into the unknown and trust him. And that's how, like Kara said, that we'll live that abundant life. He has this abundant life waiting for us, and it's just a matter of will we be willing to go through the pain of growth to get to it. And that is another area and another way that a prayer partnership benefits, because there are some things that Annie had already gone through, and she had the pearls that I was still holding on to the plastic beads. And she's like, Sherry, it's okay. Let go of the beads. You can trust him. He's got pearls waiting for you. And there are areas in my life where I could say to Annie, it's okay. Let go of those plastic beads. God's got a pearl necklace waiting for you. So when you have a prayer partnership and when you have two people who are growing their own course, their own race, their own speed, it's a wonderful partnership. And you know that it's a partnership that God blesses and is pleased with when you can encourage each other to grow in different areas. And then you'll both be better at the end than if you were just growing by yourself. Again, it goes back to that where 2 or 3 are gathered, there he is in the midst. 2 and 3 are stronger than just one on your own. And so I want to leave you with that today. I want to leave you with that encouragement that not only evaluate your own personal, spiritual, physical, emotional growth, but evaluate the growth of your prayer partnership. And if you don't have a prayer partnership yet, then continue to pray and ask God to bring that person into your life. Or if you've evaluated it and you realize that the partnership that you have right now is not very healthy, then ask God to either change it to help you both grow closer to him so that those areas that are more negative, that he will help you change them to positive, or help him to bring somebody else alongside of you that will help you guys grow and bring the relationship back to one that pleases God. So in John 16:33, these things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In this world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world. God is for us, not against us. God wants to see our growth, and he wants to see us blessed, and he wants to see us living that abundant life more than we wanted. And I just want to encourage you with that. Head over to Kara's website, KaraRHunt.com, or my website, SherrySwalwell.com, and we talk about having that personal relationship with Jesus right there with step-by-step of how you can find that yourself. And then if that's you, or even if you just need prayer or encouragement and you're already a son or daughter, head over to cheeruppodcast@gmail.com and just talk to us. Share with us what's going on, and we will be happy to stand with you in prayer. Or come over to the Facebook group and join that Cheer Up Podcast on Facebook. We are so glad that you were here with us today. I hope that it was encouraging to you and that you're able to see different ways that you have grown and maybe different things or a different challenge or two of ways that you want to grow in the next year or the next 2 years. Next week, we're going to come back and it's going to be our last topic. We're going to end the series of the prayer partnership with Widen Your Circle. So I hope that you want to come back and that you will join us next week as we talk about how to widen our prayer partner, prayer warriorship circle. So it was great to talk to you today, and we will talk to you again next week. Have a great rest of your week. Bye-bye.